What's up, everyone? Again, I almost hate to start the event because that music is such a bop. How's it going, everyone? Happy day 2 of GDC. As we are setting up here on our end, I would love to see in the chat what's been your favorite thing about the GDC server so far? What have you liked the most about our server so far? The events? Love that. The people? Oh, that's so wholesome. I love that too. Ship it. Yeah, I like the ship it emoji too. That's my favorite thing out of the server so far, for sure. Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I'm super excited for today's event. So today's event is the long-awaited app building workshop with Shay. I'm going to give Shay a moment to introduce themselves in a second. But I just want to hype up this workshop for a couple minutes myself first because I've seen this workshop before. It's awesome. The goal of this workshop is that you're going to learn how to build an app on Discord. Yes, which is super exciting. It's super cool. And just for context as well, we will be talking about some coding stuff. So a little bit of prior coding knowledge is helpful. We'll be looking into JavaScript in particular. You don't necessarily have to have coded in JavaScript before, but it helps if you have before. But we're going to walk you through how to create an app from beginning to end, and the goal of today's workshop is to have a fully functioning app on Discord by the end of the day. So who's excited? Let's see some emojis in the chat. Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right, cool. Well, without further ado, Shay, I will let you introduce yourself. I'll be here hanging out in the background, folks. One other thing that I do want to mention is during the workshop, if you have questions, drop them in the virtual stage event text channel that you're already chatting in. I will be facilitating questions in the background. We have an awesome team here today that is supporting Shay with this workshop that will be answering them in the background, and I'll be making sure that they get to all of your questions. So if at any point you see me skipping over questions, you're welcome to ping me. Ping me, though, and don't ping Shay because Shay's going to be busy presenting. So please post your questions in this chat. We will get to them. Just give us a little bit of patience as we're answering all the questions. I do expect that we'll have some technical questions that we'll be addressing during today's workshop just because of the nature of the content. All right, cool. I'm going to stop talking. Shay, you're welcome to take it away. And happy to see you all here. Let's go.
Lovely. Thank you, Emily. And before I get started, if you remember Alana from yesterday, it's her birthday today, so everyone tell her a happy birthday. She's in chat right now. And yeah, an Aries season, happy Aries season. And it's also a new moon. Happy new moon, everyone. Cool, but my name is Shay. I use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I'm a developer advocate here at Discord. am on our apps and API team, so do things like run these workshops, do developer sort of content, help with documentation, and developer comms in general. But super excited to run this publicly for the first time. We've only run it a couple times internally. And so you'll be the first external audience, and we're really excited to go through it. So as a kind of, also I'm in the Discord office, so there's like people passing by, so I might get distracted, and I'm also using technical equipment that I'm not used to. So sorry if there's like some glitches, but we'll try our best. So yeah, a brief overview of what we're going to go over today. It's a little bit of a long workshop. It's going to last around 2.5 hours. And while it's kind of long, it'll be split up into a couple of different sections. The first part is going to be slides only, where I'll go over the Discord platform, the developer features we have, in the different APIs. But then we'll pivot and do most of the time actually hands-on building an app. The goal of this workshop is for people to kind of walk away with either their own app that's running or the knowledge to go build an app afterwards. And so excited to get into it. As Emily said, if there's any questions, go into chat. Oh, thank you, Emily. I literally get my first slide. But just to get started, it would be great to get an understanding of your familiarity with Discord apps. So Emily just posted a poll in chat and just respond, A, if you've never used or really heard of Discord apps, B, if you've heard but you've never really built one before, C, if you've tried to build one, and then D, if you have built one or a couple. I know some of you in chat already from DDevs, which is our developer server, and I'll plug it later as well. But hello, everyone from DDevs. Cool. So there's a lot of different experience in this chat. And hopefully, regardless of what you answered, you'll be able to get something out of the workshop today, even if you've already built an app before. Ethan, I don't think you. No, I love you. But hopefully there'll be something to get out of the workshop today, regardless of your skill level or if you've built an app before. As Emily said, we'll be using JavaScript. It's nice to know a little bit of the basic concepts of JavaScript, but you don't need to know anything detailed to follow along. We're going to be really focusing on the interactions between Discord and the code and not like the code itself. And we'll just give you some copy and paste for the core JavaScript stuff. Cool. So I'm going to start off by talking about what Discord apps are. So apps help you extend and customize your Discord servers. Apps help you extend and customize your Discord servers across all of Discord. You can do things like moderate with the AutoMod APIs, automate roles with things like reactions or buttons. You can even create like mini games within Discord or do things like integrations with third-party services or games or apps. On this slide, we have a app ModMail, which we use in DDevs to help kind of facilitate moderation escalations within our server. And it's a server of like 200,000 developers. So it's difficult to moderate and difficult to pass off moderation activity, both among the moderation team as well as Discord staff. So this app helps us a lot, keeps a log of all of it for future reference, and makes it really easy to facilitate those interactions. And it's all done through an app. Another popular kind of app is just notifications from third-party services. This is especially popular in creator or gaming communities to post a notification when something like a stream starts or an upload is created. And so this kind of app is really popular in creator or gaming communities, and it helps kind of consolidate and bring together the communication about all of these different platforms and videos and uploads happening on other platforms and really centralize it in Discord where that community is already kind of hanging out and talking and chatting with each other about that content itself. Is the audio better now, Emily, or no? Can you all hear me?
But just be me. I can hear you totally fine. It just comes in a little bit crackly sometimes when you're further away. But
okay.
Honestly, other people are saying it's perfect, so it could be me. Maybe it's a me problem. Is it me? Am I the problem?
Is Emily the problem? Everyone react in chat.
We're good. We're good.
Cool. So there's all kinds of different kinds of apps. We'll go through a couple of different ones in the next couple of slides. But apps are built by a community of developers around the world. So we have over 450,000 developers across the world. A lot of them hang out in our DDev server. Some of them don't. And they've built over 500,000 active apps on the platform. And some of those apps are built just for one person or a group of friends, and some of them are built for millions of other servers or millions of other people that developer doesn't even know. And a lot of those are distributed on the app directory, which has over 6,000 discoverable apps, where you can search through categories or search through keywords and app descriptions, or you can browse the collections that we have on the homepage. Which are curated by some people here at Discord, and it highlights apps that exist in different categories. So right now, I think we have some gaming categories as well as apps that customize your server. And so definitely check those out. I also believe the app directory is rolling out to more users over the next couple days and not just admins. So hopefully you can browse it even if you're not admin of a server. Well, so I'm going to go through a couple apps. I'll keep this pretty quick. But the first one is Virtual Fisher, which is in over 230,000 servers. And it's a fishing game inside of Discord. It allows you to fish, create an inventory, level up, and complete quests all within Discord's UI. And you can have conversation around the minigame while it's happening. This is just a couple screenshots of Virtual Fisher, and it really showcases how you can kind of create a social gaming experience within Discord. Another example of this sort of app is like the GDC one that we were all playing yesterday. Protostar, team, OP, winners, like that's my team. But it's another really good example of apps inside of Discord that are a social gaming experience. And it's a really simple game concept. But it creates a lot of social engagement and a lot of communication and fun between members. Another really common type of app is gaming integrations or integrations with third-party services. So Albert is a pretty recent app that is also in a collection on the homepage right now, but it connects to Valorant itself. So it pulls in information from your Valorant profile, like your rank, or your like tier. I don't play Valorant, so I don't know all of it, but like it pulls in your rank and stats within Discord. And so you can like share your stats, or you can do things like find people to join a game with. This is especially good for like if you're really passionate about a specific kind of game, and so are your friends, like Valorant or like Roblox or something like that. You can kind of bring those apps into your server and really communicate around those and pull in data. Another really cool thing about this app is it allows you to create linked roles, which allows you to use things like rank or something like that to automatically assign users role within Discord servers. And the admin can kind of set that up, but it's actually the metadata is ported through Discord apps, like third-party Discord apps. And so it's really just a good way to bring data into Discord and really create like a fuller gaming experience outside of just the game itself. And the last one is not a gaming app at all. It's called BagelBot, and it's more of a social app that's just in servers. It's actually something that was built during Hack Week last year here at Discord. It was created by our people team, I want to say, and the director of the apps team, director of engineering of apps. And they just created BagelBot, which allows you to just meet different people in your server. It's a really simple concept. You just fill out a profile, and then you are kind of randomly assigned another person on a regular cadence. And this app will create a private thread for you and that other person, and it'll just introduce you, post your intro, and give you just a reminder to meet and set up time to meet and interact with this member. And it's really basic, as I said, as a concept, but it is really like it really does bring social engagement across the server, and you really do talk to people that you wouldn't normally talk to on a server. So it is a really cool and interesting type of social app that exists in large communities. Cool. So Emily is going to post a poll in the, we'll have a couple checkpoints along the way, but just a quiz of Discord apps do all of the following except for what? A, customize your server, B, extend your server, or C, give you free nitro. Yeah, I set myself up for that one, huh? Okay, cool. Thanks for the engagement, friends. Yeah, so apps don't give you free nitro in case you are not one of the people trolling and actually believe it, but I believe you're all trolls. Cool, Cool. We're going to pivot into talking about app features and the API itself. This is going to really touch on specifically if you're creating an app, what features you have access to, and within Discord. So messages are the basic building block for users as well as apps within Discord. So it's the place where most people will encounter an app for the first time. So like if something sends a notification from a third-party system or an app sends something into a channel in a social setting, it's the way a lot of people are going to encounter an app in Discord for the first time. And it's natural to the way users are already using Discord, posts or messages or threads. Apps interacting in the place where users are already communicating within Discord. And so it's a really natural place for apps to exist, but definitely not the only place apps exist in Discord. And messages can be created a couple of different kinds of ways. If you have the proper permissions, you can always create a message using the create message endpoint. You can also use webhooks, which is like those notifications from the third-party system. And you can also use it to respond to interaction. So you can send a message in response to a slash command or in response to a button click or something like that. But as I said, messages don't have to remain static. There's interactive components that you can add to your messages when you're sending messages through apps in Discord. Regular users can't send buttons or select menus, but apps can. And interactive components make messages really actionable and create more and deeper engagement inside of Discord with your app. So this is an example of a third-party ticketing app. And when, let's say it sends this notification every time a ticket is created in this third-party system. It has a select menu as well as a button that allows you to automatically assign that issue to an agent or something like that from within Discord. And select menus can have a couple of different types. You can either populate it with static text, so manually define it, or you can populate it using Discord resources, like a list of users or a list of channels or roles. And you can automatically define that within the payload when you're sending the select inside of Discord. It also has buttons to allow you to close an issue automatically from Discord, or if you need to do deeper tasks, it can link you out to like a dashboard or a third-party system. And so it's really quick for these quick interactions, quick engagement within the context of people having the conversation about this. And we're going to go over this a little bit later as we start to code, but I just want to introduce a couple of concepts in terms of how you actually handle interactions in Discord. So let's pretend we're sending a button instead of a message, and our app needs to handle that. This is really based around HTTP. It's not touching a lot on gateway, and if that doesn't make sense, totally fine. We're going to hit on it later. But just know it's like one way you can interact or handle an interactive request. And so one thing to call out here is there's an app on the left and Discord and Discord's API kind of on the right. And the left has something called an interactions endpoint URL. And this is the URL where Discord is going to send all these requests to your app, whether it's a slash command or whether it's a button press or whether it's a modal that was submitted for your application. You'll use this interaction endpoint URL, and Discord will know, like, if anything happens with your app, send it there. And so if I were creating an app that sends a button, let's say I was posting a message into a channel, I would attach a button to that message and a components array. And when I define that button, I attach something called a custom ID. And so here it's just represented by like this my button string, but it's a custom ID that allows you to uniquely identify that specific button. So your app may send like 4, 5, 10, hundreds of buttons. And this is a way for you to uniquely identify that specific button so your app knows what action to take when Discord sends you an event back to your interactions endpoint URL. And so after your app sends the message with the button contained, let's say a user clicks it in a channel. Discord is listening for all kinds of button presses, for your buttons, their buttons, all kinds of buttons. But Discord is listening for that. And if a user presses a button, Discord is going to send an event. That event contains things like who clicked the button, what channel was it clicked in, as well as things like your custom ID, which, as you know, is the unique identifier for that button. And we'll set this up later as we're actually coding the app. But this payload also contains things like the interaction ID and token. And this is partially how your app can respond to interactions. Your app has a couple of different ways to respond, in which we'll go over. One is like a modal, one is like a message, another is just acknowledging it and then doing some handling on your end, which we'll actually do. The kind of defer and then reply later is super helpful for if you have to process a lot of data, because you as an app actually only have 3 seconds to respond to an interaction. So if I'm doing something like generating an image, I'm going to have to defer it and then respond later. But kind of moving on from the interaction lifecycle itself and from messages, commands are one of the core interaction points of apps as well. And there are 3 types of commands. Most of you are probably familiar with slash commands. Those are the primary entry point for if you want to take an action with an app and seek out that action, you can use slash commands. And slash commands are accessed via typing a backslash in the text input or using the plus icon and selecting the command picker. And you can visually browse these, or you can type the command itself using the backslash. And there are also 2 other types of commands. One is message commands and one is user commands. Message commands are really helpful if you need the context of a specific message. So let's say you want to create an app that sends reminders to a user, or you want to translate a message, or you want to create a task from the contents of a message. Message command is really helpful for this kind of message-specific interactions where you want to take that action in that context. User commands are the same thing, but for users. So let's say you want to take action on a user. You can right-click on a user, and if any apps are installed that have user commands, they'll show up under the apps section here. This is especially helpful for things like moderation actions, so blocking or timing out a user, or assigning a ticket, or I use this poke example. And so, yeah, just user-based actions. But as I said, slash commands are really the primary one. They are a little bit more visible, a little bit more intuitive to users, and it's what most apps start with, and definitely one of the core entry point for apps. And slash commands also have a couple of other features. So you can create subcommands. So let's say you want one primary command and then a couple subcommands under it. Slash commands allow that. User message commands do not. They also allow slash command options, which can kind of be thought of as parameters for a slash command. If you're familiar with a command line interface or something like that, it's just a visual indication of options and customizable things you can pass into a command. And this allows you as a developer to not go back and forth with users inside of Discord through messages or buttons and messages. It allows you to get the user to input as much information up front, which creates really actionable, really quick interactions with your app. It just adds a lot of customizability. And options can be all kinds of things like text, numbers, or Discord resources itself, just like select menus. So it can be populated with users or channels or roles automatically if you define it as you're sending it into Discord. So when you're responding to a slash command or something like that, as I said, one of the options is a modal. And modals are really good for collecting form-like data from users. They're deeper interactive surfaces than something like a command line option or a command option. And they only really allow inputs, up to 5 inputs, I believe. And the inputs can either be short form or long form. The one at the bottom is an example of a long form one. But they are blocking interfaces, so you want it to be quick for the user and to just fill out a form really quickly. and kind of get on with the interaction. So it is really helpful for specific form-like data, but other interactions make more sense in something like a message or during / command invocation, having options. And kind of moving around into the user metadata piece, which a lot of gaming apps specifically use. There are a couple different features where you can associate metadata with in a third-party service with a specific Discord user. So a really popular example of this is rich presence, of course. Just like how you can show what you're listening to on Spotify or what game you're playing through one of the first-party connections that you can add to your Discord account. You can also do this with apps. So as an app, you can create a rich presence integration and have people showing that they're playing your game or engaging with your app or something like this. And this shows up in a user's profile within Discord after they've authenticated and gone through the steps to allow your app to access their profile. Another place where you can add user metadata inside of Discord is through linked roles, which is a newer feature. And linked roles allows admins to automatically set up gated roles. And they're gated because they're based on specific metadata with a built-in or a third-party connection. So let's say you have an account and you want everyone that has a specific role to have a certain number of badges or a certain stat or a certain rank or a number of games played or something like that. The admin can set that up after your app configures role metadata with a specific user. And so then users can connect with your app so that your app can send that role metadata for them and you can get that role automatically. So it's kind of this automated way to create roles using third-party metadata. And there's a specific linked role tutorial on the developer documentation as well, if you're interested in that. Two more quick slides. One is voice connections, which allow apps, just like users, to connect and stream to voice channels. A lot of popular apps for this are music-like apps. So a big one is SoundCloud, which allows you to create this collaborative queue and listening experience with friends in your server. And you can kind of create this, social experience where you can create this queue. It's also used in gaming-like apps. I saw a recent app. It's called, it's an Among Us integration. So it pulls in game data from Among Us as you're playing, and it'll automatically mute and unmute players as the game progresses so that you avoid the kind of someone forgetting to unmute and ruining the entire round or things like that. And so there are gaming integrations like that that take really interesting creative approaches to things like voice connections in Discord. And lastly, this is kind of a catch-all slide, but basically anything a user can access or use as a resource in Discord, like automod rules or emojis or roles or stickers, really anything in Discord can kind of be customized by apps if it has the proper permissions. So automod rules can be configured and kind of customized if the app has like the administrator permission. Emojis can be added, roles can be added or edited, and really any way you can customize your experience. You can create a really custom server, a really custom Discord experience through different APIs, through different apps, and through different features on the platform. And so you can kind of creatively think of how you might use ways to create and edit channels or any of these core Discord resources to create a really unique experience, whether it's just for your friends or whether you want to put the app on the actual directory. All right, number 2 is which is not a type of command an app can create in Discord. A message command, a channel command, or a / command. Lovely. Discord can add new badges. We have the active developer batch. So if you're an active developer, You can claim the active developer badge in the developer portal. So here's your new badge. Lovely. Cool. So I'm going to briefly go into the APIs, and we'll take like a little tiny break, and we'll get into actually building an app. So Discord has two primary APIs we're kind of going to be talking about today. One is the HTTP API, and the other is the Gateway API. And the HTTP API is a REST-like API to interact with Discord. You can do things like send and update data, like posting a message or editing a message or creating a slash command or any kind of thing that is creating or updating resources within Discord. You can also fetch data from Discord, like information about a member in a server or information about a channel and that sort of thing. And this is a REST-based API that is good for interacting with resources in that way. Gateway API is another popular API you can use, and it's a WebSocket-based API that is good for listening and responding to events that are happening in the server where your app is installed. So if you want to listen to reactions and have your app do something every time a message is reacted to, you can use the Gateway API and listen for the message reaction add event. You can also listen to things like server joins when a member joins that specific server. You can use the guild member add events. And all of these events are on the developer documentation in the Gateway API documentation. We're not going to be talking about the Gateway API a ton during the live coding session, but if you do use it, gateway connections are WebSocket based, so they're harder to maintain and keep open and like have this constant two-way stream of communication. So I would highly recommend using developer libraries, something like that, that comes with gateway support built in. And apps can use both Gateway API and HTTP API, so it's not limited to one or the other. And you can really use both, and a lot of larger apps use both because they have purposes for both of these APIs. And the last thing I want to talk about really briefly, which this is not an API, but it makes it easier to interact with the different APIs, which is we have a lot of developer tools, both first and third-party developer tools, which you can use to help speed up and simplify development for when you're building Discord apps. And there are a lot of community-specific libraries, so libraries that are built by community members themselves, which are listed on our community resources page in the documentation. All of these links I'm saying, we will post them, so you don't have to like start Googling or something right now. We'll post them after the session or in between. But there are a lot of different libraries you can use in your language of choice, whether it's JavaScript, Python, Go, Rust, like whatever you want to use, Java. And there's also things like visualizers. So on the screen, this is an embed visualizer created by Autocode, and it allows you to visually build the message that you want your app to send in Discord. And then it gives you this JSON payload that you can use to just like send in your app. So you can just copy and paste that payload, and your app can send it without having to manually define every single part of the message. And so yeah, there's all different kinds of developer resources. Definitely check them out. And there's a bunch of them listed on our documentation themselves. The last question, what can you use to fetch information about a channel? The Gateway API, the Game SDK, or the HTTP API? TypeScript is a knock-up JavaScript. No, it's not. Don't say that. Nice, yes. C is the right answer. C is how you're going to fetch a lot of information about specific resources inside of Discord. The HTTP, has the answer always been C? I probably did that. Okay, coding. You probably can with the Game SDK. Yeah, probably. Listen to coding, but you should probably use the HTTP API. And that is the primary one that you use to fetch information about resources. Uh, cool. So we're going to take a small little break. I am going to post a couple of links if you that are like set up for this workshop portion. But feel free to take your time. We'll have some time during this break and when we come back for you to kind of complete anything necessary. But I'm just going to turn off my video for just a second, post a link, and we will be right back in like 3-4 minutes. What's a good time, Emily? How long is good to give people? Like
Let's
we can.
let's do let's do a 5-minute break. So folks, at 41 after the hour, be sure you're back.
Lovely. See you all in a second. In Discord and I jump around with this camera. A development server where you can test and install Discord apps. If you don't have one, just go ahead and create a new server. And then a glitch account. We're going to be using this service called Glitch. It just allows us to do a lot of the coding inside of the browser. And so it saves us from having to locally configure things, which can be a headache during live workshops. But you are definitely welcome to do things locally as well. If you like, it might just be a little bit more difficult to follow. Cool. So as you all are doing that, let's see. I need to share my new screen. I guess I'm in the office and this screen is a giant TV right in front of me, so I'm just gonna code on a giant TV. That should be good. Um, One second, I'm grabbing a couple other links so that I can post them in chat and then we will get started. I'm also going to post this in chat because I want to see if folks are kind of back. And if, oh my gosh, reacted with the dog. Well, it looks like most people are ready, so I think we're going to go ahead and move on. And so I'm going to post a couple links. One is to this GitHub repository that I'm on right now. And this is going to have all of the code that we're going to use during this workshop. And it also has a guided tutorial, a written version of everything, basically, of what we're going to do. I'll go into Glitch in a second. But you don't need to use that right now, but just so you have that as a resource. If you look at my screen, this guided tutorial is truly most of the stuff we're going to go through today. And so if you learn better by following along in written form while I'm kind of going through it myself, you're welcome to go into that GitHub repo and kind of follow along if you want, or if you want to use it as a resource after the workshop, it's there for you as well. And so that's kind of what we'll be going through today. The app that we're actually building, I have it on my slides, but it's here as well. It's a really pretty basic app that is just going to use a slash command and buttons. And the kind of interesting part of it is that we are actually generating an image with a third-party service. So the text that appears on top of these kind of the fortunes that appear in the text in these boxes, you can kind of customize and things like that. We're generating the image within the app themselves. But it's basically just sending image in response to a slash command. And so we'll be using message embeds as well as mentions and buttons and slash commands. And so to kind of get started, what we're going to do first is actually log into Glitch if you haven't already, and then use that Glitch remix link, which is in this message. And what remixing is going to do is it's going to clone that repository that I was just on, and it takes a little bit to load, so it's going to take some time. but it's just going to clone all of those files and give you your own custom project with a clone of that with that project. And Glitch, if you are not familiar with it, it is just an IDE within your browser, basically. So it allows you to just develop and code directly in your browser, and it also has a public URL that you can use for the project. And that's important because if you remember when we were talking about interactivity, Discord needs a public URL to send your app information when a / command is invoked that your app owns, or a message is pressed or something like that. So it allows us to do that pretty easily. If you're developing locally, you can tunnel using a tool like ngrok pretty easily. But since we don't really want to set up local environments or worry about that now, we're just using a platform like Glitch. Ruplit's another one that's pretty popular that people might be familiar with as well. And it's good as well. And so once you clone the project, you'll see that you kind of land on the README. And I just want to go over the interface of Glitch really quickly. The top left, you have a unique project name. So it's just this 3-word project name. Yours is going to be different than mine. But this is unique for your individual project. Emily, can you repost the link or like bump it or something?
I got you.
Thank you. And then here on the left, you have all of the files in your project. So we'll go through these in more details. But the main code for our project is in this app.js file. And we'll kind of walk through this in a little bit. But you also have commands.js, which is our /command payload, which we'll use to actually create the /command through Discord's API. And then you have a bunch of other things like code examples. This app.js and the examples folder is the finished code that will kind of go through. So if you complete the entire workshop or entire tutorial, it'll be this finished file. There's also feature-specific examples. So if you just care about responding to buttons or responding to commands or modals or select menus, I put a couple examples of those running inside of here as well. And then another file to point out is this .env file. And these are environment variables that are specific to your project. And this is where we're going to put things like our authentication token and credentials that we don't want to be sharing. It's really important that you don't check in stuff like this to source control or anything like that. These are like pretty important for your app and pretty important not to share with others. Because one of the things we'll have in here is a token which carries the permission for your app. And so if that leaks, then someone could kind of like hijack your app. But we scrub places like GitHub, so we like automatically delete tokens that are like public like that, but just like be safe. Don't check it into source control or anything like that. And if you do, you can regenerate it from the developer portal. The two other things to call out just about Glitch interface is the logs down here, which is how you can see if your app is running or not. And then we also have a terminal which we'll use. And this is just going to allow us to run a command later on to actually install our /command that we want to install. We will dig into those in just a second. But for now, we are actually going to go and create a Discord app. And so once you have your Glitch project, what we want to do is go and create our actual Discord app, and then we'll connect the two. So you can create a Discord app by going to the developer portal, which here's the link to that. And if you go to the developer portal, I can kind of walk through this, and I'll give you some time to complete it afterwards if you want to just pay attention to kind of what I'm doing. And then I will give you some time in a bit. You can also try and walk through it, but it might be hard to follow and listen. So just a word of advice. There's also that tutorial if you want. But if you go onto the developer portal and click applications, you'll have all the applications that you have as an app or as a user that you own. To create a new application, you may not have anything down here if this is the first app you're creating, But you can click New Application in the top right corner. And this allows you to create a new app. You just fill out a name like Workshop, example, and create the app. And once you create an app, you're going to land on the general information page within the app settings. And this contains things like the app icon, description, name, and that sort of thing. It also includes some of the environment variables that we're going to use for our glitch project. So things like the application ID and the public key. And the public key is something that allows us to verify requests are coming from Discord. And so that's all going to be on the general information page. You can also see the interaction endpoint URL, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And there's some other URLs down here, like the linked roles verification URL as well. We're going to be using this application ID public key interaction endpoint URL during our tutorial. But for now, we're just kind of taking a glance at this, and we're going to configure and install this app. Over here on the left, you have a couple of different other tabs you can go to. We're, for now, just going to go to the bot tab. And the bot tab is how we're going to add a bot user to our app. And so to add a bot user, you click Add Bot and just go through the confirmation. And I have to 2FA. You may have to as well. But 1 second. But a bot user is basically allows your app to appear in Discord similar to other users in a server. So your app can have the same permissions as those kinds of users. So like, let's say you have an admin permission or something like that, or the permission to manage messages, just the different permissions that a Discord user can have, your bot user can also have. And it's how it appears inside of Discord when you install the app. On the bot page, after you create a bot, you have the username and icon, which is distinct from the app username and icon. And then you have a token. The bot token is going to carry all of those bot user permissions. And so that your bot user will have the permissions that it needs to be installed with to function. This will carry all of those. So that's another thing that we're going to put into our glitch project in just a second. Down here, if you scroll down, there are some options you can have for your bot user. Like you can make it public so that anyone can install your app. Or if you leave it private like this, only I can install this app. I'm going to do it so you all don't install it. And there are also privileged gateway intents. Gateway intents are kind of how you tell Discord what events you want to receive if you open a gateway connection. As I said, we're not going to go deep into gateway connections or the gateway API, but all of that is in the developer documentation in the gateway docs, which I can link after this workshop. For now, since we have our bot user created, we're going to go to the OAuth 2 screen and the URL generator under this. This is how we're going to generate a URL to actually install our app to our server. There are 2 types of permissions that are on this page. One is scopes and one is bot permissions. So scopes are kind of granted on a per user basis. So an individual user grants your app scopes. And those scopes can be things like to install a bot user to that server, or to do things like role connections right, which is how you add role metadata for linked roles. And so there's different kinds of scopes you can have here. Right now, we just care about this bot scope because we care about adding our bot user to the server that we want to install it on. And once you click this bot scope, there's going to be this second area that pops up on this page, and these are bot permissions. And these were those permissions I was talking about. And there are permissions that are similar to another Discord user, ones you could have as a user as well. And so the ones we care about here are sending messages, and there are a couple ones that we need in terms to send files. And those include attached files, and view channels wherever that is. Oh, it's down here. Read messages and view channels, attach files, and send messages. And I think those are the three we care about. And up here, we can also add application commands, which is going to allow us to install slash commands in the server. But as Austin just said in chat, the bot scope actually comes with, it implicitly grants the application command scope. So you can either have this or not. I would recommend just having it. Just know that it's like a scope that is being installed, regardless of whether you manually define it or not, if you're installing a bot user. But do as you will. You can either check this or not, but the important part is checking bot and checking these three permissions. And so I'm going to give you all a second to kind of go through that. Well, actually, let me just show you this down here. After you fill out the permissions, there's this generated URL, and we're going to go ahead and copy and paste this into our browser to actually install our app to our test server. Install this to the test server that you created for this workshop or just one you have lying around, and just authorize and install it. And yeah, with that, I'm going to go back to this screen and leave it here and give you all a little bit to go through the app configuration and install your app to your test server. Well, I'm going to move on, but if you're getting stuck at all, just reach out to the people in chat that are helping through that, and they can help get your app set up and installed. Or there is that kind of walkthrough in the GitHub repository. And I'm going to move on and just add their credentials to our actual glitch project. And so at this point, this next part, we're just going to, as I said, port the credentials. And the credentials we need for our app are the app ID, our Discord token, or our bot user token, and our public key. And as I kind of pointed this out earlier, but the application ID and public key are on this general information page. So if you're in your app configuration or the app settings, you can just click on general information and copy these values. We're going to put these inside of our .env file in our glitch project. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the application ID and add a variable here called app ID. And this variable is important because we reference it inside of the code. I think inside of this one. So we're referencing this inside of the code, and so it's just important that you call it all caps app_ID, and you can just paste your app ID in there. And then we'll add this public key. And the public key, as I mentioned, it helps verify that requests are coming from Discord. And it's directly under the application ID on that general information page. You can just copy and paste that directly into your glitch project as well. And then the third one is the Discord token. And the Discord token is on that bot page. I should have copied the token when it allowed me to hit the copy button, but I didn't. So I now need to reset it and enter 2FA again. And I'm going to do that. But it's on this bot page, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because I do not want people taking my token. But it's on that bot screen, and you can just add it to your project as Discord token. And I'll kind of walk through that, but I just want to get my actual credential first. Okay, I can share my screen again. Okay. So yeah, you just paste it in there as Discord token. You can't see the full thing, so I think I'm fine, but I'll reset it after this event anyway. But yeah, if basically all we did there was go through that app that we just created and installed, and ported the environment variables to our glitch project. You don't need to understand exactly what the variables are there for at this point, but just go ahead and add the app ID, add the public key, and add the Discord token to this .env in your glitch project. And this step is also the setup credentials part, and this kind of step walks through where in the developer portal each of these environment variables or app identifiers are. So you can use that if you're kind of lost of where to go in the developer portal. I'm going to give just a second, and then we're going to set up the interactive endpoint URL. But I want to give you all just a brief second to go through that. And remember, if you get stuck, one of the people in here can kind of help you out. So if you don't know where a certain credential is or something like that, just ask. Yeah, the three variables are all. Cool. I'm going to take it one step more and set up the interactive endpoint URL. And then if you get stuck on this credential part or the interactive endpoint URL, we can take a brief break there as well if we need. So the interactive endpoint URL, one more time, is where Discord will send interactive events for your app. So we're going to use it specifically here for when a user invokes the / command we're going to install with our app. We want Discord to send our app the payload or the request that is associated with that. It's going to contain things like the who invoked the / command, where it was invoked from, and any options that they pass through it. And to set up our interactive endpoint URL, it was important that we had our public key figured out first, because the public key is automatically done. And if you use a developer library, especially something like Discord.js or something like that, it's going to handle a lot of this for you. So I kind of just hid the logic away. but it's going to automatically verify that the request is coming from Discord. And that is what our public key is being used for. You don't really have to worry about this, but just know that that is why the public key is set up. And another thing that's important is that we have our app actually running right now. The reason that's important is because when we set up an interactive endpoint URL with Discord and our developers or our app settings, our app is going to receive a request from Discord that is just a ping, and it's just saying, it's just basically asking our app whether it's up and running and whether we're ready to receive events. And we have to respond to that request. And so that code is already set up for you. And it's just handling these verification requests. So that's why it's important that our app is running right now. And to get the URL that we're going to input for an interaction endpoint URL, we're going to hit this share button in the top right corner. This gives us a couple of links that are directly, that are our project right now. And we care about this live site URL. We care about this one instead of the code one because we need that public URL where Discord can send our requests. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy that live site link. Just click this copy button and go back to my developer portal. On the developer portal, I'm going to go to my general information page and go to the interaction endpoint URL. And I'm just going to paste that link right into there. And I'm going to append something after here. And I'm going to append /interactions. And I'm appending this specifically because the app that I set up for us, this template app, is listening at that URL at the /interactions endpoint. You could make this whatever you want. Like if you wanted to do this, your slash would be like /workshop. Or if you just had this, you would just paste in the link. But just for simplicity, I would keep it the same. I can't spell. And keep it interactions. And it's just the endpoint at that URL. Discord is going to send a request. And then we can save changes once we've done that. And if you successfully save changes, then that means that we have verified our endpoint. If you input a URL that's incorrect or something like that, if you try and save changes, it's not going to work. If it's not working, that's probably one of the things you should check first. But yes, I need to re-verify. There we go. Cool. How are we doing? Let me see. After this, we're actually going to dig into code. This configuration part takes a little bit the first time, but I just wanted to take it kind of slow. And then we'll jump into code right after this and actually get into the logic of what's happening in that app.js file. Okay, cool. I am going to go ahead and go forward, but if you're still working on that step, all good. The people in here can help you, of course, and can respond to any questions that you post into chat. Cool, so we're going to go back to our glitch project. We have our interaction endpoint URL verified, and so now we want to set up slash commands and handle those slash commands. Before we do that, I want to kind of briefly go through this app.js file, because this is where we're going to be writing a lot of our code. So at the top of this file, we import a bunch of libraries that we're using. One is Express here. Express is a popular sorry, there are like people walking above and by me, and I'm getting distracted. But Express is a popular JavaScript library that allows you to set up a server, or a framework that allows you to set up a server, which is what we're using to do this slash interactions endpoint URL. We're also importing form data, which is a package we're going to use. Typically when you send post requests to Discord, like when you're creating a slash command or something like that, you'll be sending those in JSON. But something we're going to be doing is uploading images to Discord. And so we're going to actually be using form data for those requests. And we'll go into that a little bit as we get to that step. But that's just why we're importing those packages. And then I'm importing a couple of things from other places in this project. So if you look in the utils folder, in the GitHub repo, it has an overview of what these files are. But I just tried to split out a bunch of the logic of like the stuff that's not pertinent for you to like be completely familiar with at the moment. So like the fortune of actually creating the images and things like that is in the fortune.js file. If you want to customize the text that appears on those, you can by just modifying this getRandomFortune function within that fortune.js file. And you can make it whatever you want if you want to kind of customize your app within Discord. The images.js is doing using the package GIMP to actually load a font and print out the text onto these base images. And these base images I just put into this project. You can use them. Your project is already using them. It's not super important, but that's just how it's all tying together. Register is a little bit more important. It is where global commands are being installed. So I created a function here that is calling specifically the applications/app ID/commands endpoint. So if my app ID were something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the endpoint I would be calling. And this endpoint just allows me to create global slash commands. And I am just using this Discord request function from request.js, which is just a wrapper that makes it easy to call Discord's API. As I said, like a lot of developer libraries are going to have these things built in. So if you're using something in your preferred language or something like that, it's going to have a lot of these same helper functions and make it really easy to call the API directly. And so you don't need to understand these in detail or anything like that, but just so you have some context of this project as a whole. And so going back to the app.js, we are instantiating our Express app. This is just going to allow us to put up our server, and we are listening at the interactions endpoint. I kind of touched on this before, but I have code already here that's responding to ping requests from Discord. I'm using this interaction type import to kind of abstract a part of Discord's API, which is that when you're defining a button or you are trying to respond to a certain type of request, like a ping request or one for slash commands, these are actually numbers. So this would be, I actually forget what kind of, what number slash commands are, but this is something like just like 3 or 4. But just to make it more readable, I am using that import of the interaction type application command. This is pretty standard in developer libraries as well. So in your preferred library, whether like Discord.js or something else, it'll have helpers like that make it really easy to read the API itself. And then I have this other if statement that's handling, I have this if statement that's handling application commands, which includes slash commands, message command, and user commands. In this application command right now, I'm just like console logging the actual payload. We're not doing anything to handle the command yet. Down below that, I'm calling functions from other files to generate a random fortune. This is just specific to the application, not the Discord interaction. So we're going to kind of skip over that, but we call it from our code in another place. And then down here, we'll get into this later, but this builds an embed for us. So I showed you that embed visualizer in the slides earlier. And you can use something like that to kind of get a payload like this. But all this is me kind of adding attachments and an embed to a message payload. And this allows me to actually upload the image to Discord. We'll go over a much simpler example before we get into this embed, but just so you have a little bit of context. So that's app.js. With that overview, I want to actually start installing the command. So to install the command, there's a script that is set up in our package JSON called register. And this is just going to run our register function that is going to register all of the commands defined in commands.js. Right now, the only command defined by default is this fortune command. And this is a slash command payload. So type 1 here, I'm not using the helpers like I was earlier, but type 1 here is just a slash command. So it's not a user command, it's not a message command, it's just a slash command. Here, the name is the name of the command, and then you have the description. And then we have one option for the command, which is a question that the user can input if they want to. It's required as false, so it's optional. But it's just a string input. So the type here is that user can input text when they're running the slash command. And that option has the name of question and a description of the question you want answered. And I'll show you that in a visual format right after we register that command. So to register the command, I want to open the terminal. So if you remember, it's at the bottom of your glitch project. If you click on this terminal icon, you can just run npm run register. And if it's successful, then you probably successfully installed your slash command. But we want to visually verify that. So I'm going to go into my, I haven't signed in. So I want to go into the server where I installed that, this test server. And to see that 1, my app was added to this server, and 2, I successfully installed the command. So if I go into this server, I can see that my command has this fortune command. And it has that, you can see the command name visually appears here. So it's fortune, and then the description visually appears, ask a question to have your fortune read. And then you can see the command option here as well. So question here, and this is the name of the command option and the description of it. So if I just input that, nothing will happen because we've set up no logic to actually handle it. So it's not going to respond. But if we go back to our glitch project, we can see that our app, I'm going to close this terminal right now and open the logs. And I can see that my app has received this command, even though I'm not responding to it. So here you can see kind of the structure of the slash command. I can see the ID of the slash command, the name of it, so fortune, and then any value that the user has. So here it's options. You don't need to change anything in package.json. I was just showing you where I set up the actual script. You can just run npm run register in that terminal, and that's going to install that slash command within commands.js. And that's all you have to run. Glitch does this thing where it automatically starts your project. So it's going to do that npm install, npm start, that kind of stuff behind the scenes automatically. No, when it installs, it's not going to show the ID or anything. It'll show the ID if you try and run the actual slash command. Because the reason it's doing that is if I go to my app.js file, you can see that I'm logging this data here. So I'm just logging the information about the invocation, which is where this is coming from. Cool. So I'm going to set up a quick handler for this slash command, and then I'll give you a minute to kind of get it up yourself if you need another second. So the first thing we are going to do here is we want to handle just this fortune command. So I'm pulling, you can see I'm console logging the data, which I'm taking from the request body. There is that other stuff associated with the slash command, like the member who invoked the command or like where the command was run, things like that. But I don't really care about that right now. What I care about is this data, which is specific to the command. And I want to only respond to this fortune command. Because let's say my app has like a test command or like a couple other commands. I want to be able to just handle this specific one. So I'm going to write if data.name equals fortune. This is where I want to handle it. And to start off here, I'm not going to respond with an image or anything like that. I want to just start off by sending a message to the channel. So the way I'm going to do that is res.send, and I'll go through this in a second, and with a type of channel message with source. I will post this code in chat in a second if you want. We're also going to use more complex code in a second. I really just want to walk through what this is actually doing with the Discord interaction before we get to that point. It's also in that GitHub repository if you are following along there. And I'm simplifying it even more. So to walk through what I'm doing here, I'm typing res send, which is going to automatically respond to this HTTP request from Discord itself. And what I'm going to respond to it with is a type. So just like here, the type might be something like 3. Oh my gosh. Might be something like 3 or something like that. I'm using this library to make it more readable. So this response type is just channel message with source. In truth, it might just be like a 1 or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But you can just use the library we're importing. And this channel message with source is going to send a message back to the channel that that slash command was invoked in. So wherever that was invoked, it's going to send whatever message I want into that specific channel. I don't need to pass an ID or anything because Discord will keep track of that for me. I also have this data object within that res.send. And this is where I can attach any information about that message, like the content itself. You can attach embeds in here or whatever else about a message. But right now, I just want to do a really simple hello world. And so if I put content within data, that just allows me to input a string for what I want the message to say inside of Discord. And Glitch automatically saves and restarts my app when I make changes. So all of that should be fine. And I want to go back to my Discord client to see if it is running now. And there are a bunch of Fortune apps in here, unfortunately. But I will go to the one I created for this and just run it, and it should respond with "Hello World." And so yeah, I am listening and responding to that specific Fortune/command. I want to give you all a second in case you want to catch up or need help getting the response to working. Sometimes it can be difficult to get the initial response up and running. And then I posted another check-in here just to gauge how everyone is doing so far. Yeah, it looks like people might need a little bit more time. So I'm going to give you like a minute or two to kind of go through those steps. If you need help, just ask. And then we can switch to embed. And yeah, if you're looking at the GitHub repository, this code's a little bit different. I'm just like writing this as a basic example, but it's not the one we're going to keep. We're going to change this in just a second. Oh, yeah, I can send this code. Sorry. You can use this if you would like. Your getting application is not responding. So one thing you want to check is if your app is actually, if you go into the logs in your glitch project, you want to check that you can see that your app is receiving the command itself. And make sure that's happening. That's the first debugging I would do there. Other people are here to actually help you deeper technically, but yeah, the recording will be available afterwards. I'll also have the slides. I'll also repost the tutorial and a couple links that'll be helpful after the workshop itself. So all of this will be available after, so you can definitely follow along after if you need. Okay, I'm going to give one more minute and then I'm going to move on. But the code for this next part is on GitHub as well, and I'll post that and make sure you can stay kept up. You can make it say whatever you want. You can definitely do whatever you want there. I'm going to move on and make it send an actual image now. I'm going to send a link to where I am in the tutorial part because it might be easier to copy and paste the code from GitHub. All of this code, I should also remind you, the finished code for this entire project is in this example/app.js. So if you get really stuck at a part from this point on, the finished code is going to be in here. So you can also copy and paste it from here. And that way you can see the line numbers that you need to paste it on and that sort of thing. And so you can also, you can reference that or the GitHub tutorial, or I'll post what I am doing within chat itself. And so I'm going to paste this link, and what I'm going to be doing is changing the way I respond to this application command. So I went to that link I just posted, and there is this section down close to the bottom where I am actually generating a random fortune and using a different kind of response to Discord. And I mentioned this kind of response earlier on. It's a deferred channel message with source. So this is helpful if you need to do a lot of processing for your app. So for example, generating an image, which we're doing, or doing something like interacting with like AI in any way, or interacting with a database even. It may take a little bit to respond. And Discord only gives you 3 seconds to respond to a / command. So you need to respond pretty quickly. And this deferred channel message with source allows you to initially say, hey, Discord, I received this. But then later on follow up and be like, okay, this is what I want to make the actual channel message be. This is the contents I want for it. And it can be after 3 seconds if you use this deferred response. So I'm going to copy this down here. It's under, it's the last big code chunk on that page, and I will go through it after I paste it. But it replaces this entire if statement. So including if type equals interaction type dot application command, I can see where that ends. And I'm going to copy that whole block of code, and I'm just going to replace it with this big chunk of code that's going to upload an image for us. And I'm going to step through what this is doing really quickly. Yeah. I'm going to format it really quickly. Give me just a second. Cool. Okay, so in the code I pasted in, which I have the link up above, but you can just, I'll explain it first, and then you can kind of port it to your own code. I'm doing that same if name equals fortune, so I'm still identifying the specific / command that I want to respond to. And then I'm going to actually get the user input. So earlier when we were looking at the command payload and the logs, we saw that, let me see. When the user has an option, when they fill out an option, your data payload is going to have this options array. And this contains information about the user's value for all your / command options that you have. And so we know we want the value for question. So basically what this line of code is doing is checking if this options array exists. And if it does, we're going to pull that option out so we can put it inside of the response. Then what we're going to do is call this generate random fortune function. And we're passing in this ID, which I actually get up at the top. And it's just a unique identifier. It's really not important what exactly it is, but it's a unique identifier for that interaction. And I'm just using it to generate the actual image name. It's not super important as a variable. The important part is I'm calling this function. And this is actually going to generate the image itself, and it's going to put it in a temporary file that we're going to delete. Don't worry too much about that. Most of the time, if you're like uploading an image from a URL or just sending text, you don't have to worry about this like extra step along the way. And then, as I said, we're instead of sending the channel message with source, we're doing this deferred channel message with source. So that allows us to just put in the type and respond to acknowledge that we have received a /command request, and we will send a channel message in just a bit. And then as we move on, you can see that I have created a file name that we are going to use to actually read the file that is generated in this generate random fortune function. Not super important. This only matters if you're actually uploading a file to Discord. And then we're going to build the fortune embed, which is a little bit important because you may want to have an embed in your message. And let me briefly explain what the difference between an embed and just a regular message is. So if I go to my Discord client, you can see this is where we were playing around with the app before. When I just did the Hello World app, or the Hello World content parameter, when I was sending the initial response, this is just a regular message. There's no embed. An embed is when it has this color bar on the left-hand side, and it's encapsulated in this box. And so I can create an embed to create like a formatted message that I can customize the color of or put a couple of parameters in. And that's just the difference there, and that's why we're building an embed. We want it to look nice and pretty like that. So we're calling this build fortune embed function and passing in the user ID of the user that invoked our /commands. We're passing in that file name for the file that was created by the generate fortune function. And then we're passing in a header, which is just, if I go back to my client, it's just this text that appears at the top of the message embed. So it's just like the same way we're passing in content for the regular message. I'm just passing this as a header and putting it within, I don't know why I called it header, honestly. But in the embed, the field name is actually description, but it's just the description of the embed. And so I'm just passing in that actual string that for some reason I called header into the embed itself as description. In this image, so you can see the embed down here. In this embeds array, the one I'm creating, I have the description as the header, which is what I just passed in. And then I have this image, and the URL for this image is actually an attachment. And you do this when you are uploading an image itself. Another thing you could do here is, like, let's say you have an image publicly hosted. Like, you don't need to type this part, but I'm just showing you that it can be easier. Like, let's say I have an image publicly hosted on my site or on GitHub or something like that. I could just manually input the URL here and avoid all of this like attachment stuff. But I wanted to have custom images, so we're using the attachment stuff for now. But that's all it's doing. You can either pass in a public URL or you can put in an attachment stuff. And the attachment stuff, I'll send a link for the documentation after. But yeah, don't pay too close of attention to that. And this color is actually the color that the embed is going to be. So that color bar that appears next to the embed, that's what defines it right here. So that's all that function is doing. And that was the build fortune embed function. Once I have the embed, I actually want to construct the payload that I'm going to send Discord. And we're going to be using form data for this. Oftentimes when you're sending a message to Discord or making an HTTP request, you'll be using JSON and not form data. Form data is for when you upload files directly to Discord. So we're using it here. But when we're doing that other request where we just did the hello world and was sending a message, we're just using JSON there. And we're using JSON when we are also creating our /command. So all those requests we're using JSON, and that's what you're going to use for most of the time. But this is using form data, and there's more explanation of this specific thing in the documentation. Here we're just appending our embed to the message. And then we are making a request to Discord itself. And we are making a request to this specific URL, webhook/our app ID/token and messages original. And we're making this request to this endpoint because this token is our interaction token. And it's when we deferred the response up here, this is how we are actually going to update the content of the messages after we have that deferred response. So we are sending a webhook with our interaction token, and this is just telling Discord, hey, I'm ready to update that message with the content now, and we're going to have that uploaded image. When we're making that request, we have headers, and this header includes things like, hey, this is a form data payload. This isn't a JSON payload. And you don't have to worry too much about that. We're passing that specifically because we're uploading files. And then we're just calling it and we're adding our form data payload into the body of that request. And then finally, we are deleting the file down here. And that is what we are changing it to. I want to go over the most important points in this again, which is here we are responding to the request with a deferred reply. And then down here, we are using our interaction token to update a message inside of Discord. So that is how we're actually creating the message after our deferred reply. And those are the most important two things to pay attention to that you may do in your own app as well. This is all just fortune-specific, image-specific stuff. So if I go back to my Discord client after I have that code, I'm going to run the command again. And when I run that command, it should reply with an actual message with a generated image. And you can see the description here is the command option that I inputted. And we have the generated image that we created within the embed as well. And I am going to give you all a little bit because I know I just went through a bunch of code and you may have to go through that bit yourself. And so I just want to give you a second to catch up if you need it. I'm going to repost this link because this contains the payload. It's also in that example/app.js on the sidebar. And then I'm going to post this as well as a check-in, but there is no rush. I know some people are going to take a little bit. And so I will be giving just a moment for people to catch up. Or maybe not. Yeah, AutoCode is also a really good platform to start with. They have a built-in library and stuff like that. So a lot of these abstractions they have built in there as well. It's a similar platform to Glitch. It's very popular. I'm just going to wait 2 minutes or so, 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, I can give you the line number specifically. The finished app is in app.js, so the line number will be there as well. But if you're copying that code from the GitHub repository, I copied it onto line 36. But make sure you're replacing the entire if statement and not like posting it within it or anything. It goes to 36 to like 84 or something like that is the length of it. Okay, I'm gonna bump this. If you are finished, change your response to A. All good if you need a little bit of time. And then we're almost done. The last thing we're going to do is be sending a button. We're going to be responding to it in very much the same way as we respond to the slash command. But I want to go through actually creating and sending that interactive button in the message that you're sending to Discord. And so in this next part, we're just going to go through that. And we're not going to touch too much on actually responding to the message, but I'll show you that code as well. It's talked about more, but I really want to touch on actually how you send interactive components and how you define that within your message itself. Okay, so if I go back to my code, I'm going to go ahead and start adding the button. And the way I'm going to do that is by modifying the payload I'm sending for my messages. So in the same way I have this embeds array, all the components for my app are going to live in a components array. And components, by components I mean interactive components. So it could be a select menu or it could be a button. But right now I'm just going to do one button, but it's going to go into this components array. So in this payload that I'm creating and sending to Discord when the slash command is run, under embeds, I am going to, this can also be after attachments, the order of this doesn't matter. But within this JSON object, after embeds, I am going to create a components array. And this is where all my interactive components will exist within this specific message. And to create a specific component, I am going to create an object, just like I did with this embed. That's an embed object. The code for this is in the GitHub as well. And there's also, I'm going to link to some specific documentation right now as well, the message component documentation. And just to like briefly go over it, these are the different types. So you have an action row, which contains interactive components. So we're actually going to create an action row and then put a button inside. But you can also have the select, an input if you're in a modal, or a different kind of select, like a user select or role select or a channel or mentionable. And those are the ones that are automatically populated with Discord resources. So if you wanted a list of users or something like that, you can use one of these selects down here. But we're just going to be creating a button. I'm going to send this documentation into chat so that you can check out like the different components you can use and how you kind of, how the structure of them look. But I will go ahead and create it within here as well. So the type of this is going to be one. And that is the action row, which is going to be the container for the component. And within that action row, which action row, again, just like anytime you send a select or anytime you send a button, it's gonna need to be inside of an action row when you send that message. So this is just the action row. And then we're gonna put another components array in here. And this is what's gonna actually hold our buttons, or right now just one button. So here's where I'm gonna add the object that is specific to the button. So I'm gonna make this type 2 because buttons are type 2. And then I'm going to add a label. So here, I'm just copying the code kind of, but I have the button label here. And then buttons have a style. And the style is what color the button appears as. So it could appear as purple, which is primary, secondary, which is gray, and there are like two other button styles. Another is a link style. And I feel like there's one more. but I don't remember. We're doing style 2, which is the purple button, I believe. And then another thing you can do with buttons is actually have an emoji present in them. So I'm going to put in this emoji object, and I'm going to, there are 2 parameters you need for the emoji, and this allows you to do custom emoji as well as like default emoji. I'm just using a default one, but you can use a custom one if you need. That's when the ID comes into play though. Since I'm doing a default one that's just on all Discord servers, I can just make the ID null and the actual name, the emoji itself. And I'm going to copy and paste that from app.js, and I will paste this payload for you in just a second. But yeah, I'm going to copy this whole components thing. And so here I just like have the emoji directly as the name because it's a built-in emoji. And then I have this custom ID, which is the important part I really want to point out. And I went over this earlier in the slides, but custom ID is how we are going to identify the interactive component. So when a user, thank you for putting the styles in chat, that's really kind. The custom ID is how we're going to uniquely identify that button. So here we're just naming it redo button. The name isn't a big deal. You can call it whatever you want. But just make sure it is unique among the other buttons that you have in your app. And using redo button is as our identifier is how we will identify that specific button interaction and know how to reply to that button. Let's say we had a couple of other buttons in here, like we had another one that's a similar type of button. This has to be a different custom ID. If it's not, then Discord will reject that request. It has to be like another button so that you as a developer can uniquely identify it. But we don't need 2 buttons. We're just going to stick with 1 for now. So I'm going to delete that. And I am going to paste this into chat. I'm going to paste this into chat, but it's in the app.js and GitHub as well. But just so you have it, this is the actual code that I just put into my file. And this is, if you are following along, this is on line 120. It's just where we're creating the payload. So if you just scroll down to line 20 and put it in, make sure you have this comma that trails the components array so that this is valid. But yeah, it just goes right there. And then if I put that in and I go back to my Discord server, I gone to the wrong tab every single time. Then if I run the command again, the button should be appended if all goes well. Yeah, so you can see it was actually a secondary button. And it is here. And that is the button that we just created. If I click it, similar like how we did this for the slash command before, this interaction is going to fail because we're not handling it. We're not telling Discord that we've received this or anything like that. So we'll just have this button. And so I will give you a moment to actually send the button itself. And yes. The next part and the last part of this workshop is really just going to be responding with the same payload we did before, but just responding to that interactive request rather than the slash command. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the last part since it's the very last step, and then I can help anyone that is still lingering. But all I'm going to do is go and handle that button request. So if I go to the top of my app.js file, where I am handling the / command request, one thing that might be helpful here is to actually toggle this if statement that's handling the / command request. This doesn't delete anything, it's just making it easier to read. But in the same way I'm handling / commands requests, I want to handle specific interactive component requests. So if type equals, let me double check to make sure that it is what I think it is. Yeah, interaction type message component. Sorry, just switch to the finished app.js file, if you just saw that. So what I'm going to do is under where I'm handling / command, I'm going to add a new if statement that's handling specifically the type of interaction type dot message component. And this is where I'm going to handle all buttons and select menus. And so regardless of the type of component, I'll handle all of them from this single if statement. And that's why I need the actual custom ID. And so the custom ID is stored in, I think it should be data as well, so that same data where we're pulling out the, in this / command if statement, where we're pulling out the name, we're going to pull out the custom ID for the message component, for the button here. And so we're going to check if the custom ID is the one that we actually want to handle. So if custom ID, and this is just the string we passed in, is the, we made it redo button, then we are going to respond to the request itself. So here I'm just going to take a tiny shortcut, and I'm going to, similar to how we did before, just respond with a message and channel. And so I'm going to do that same res.send that we did for the application command or the / command. And I am going to make this type interactive sorry, I always forget the name that I'm keying off of. Interaction response type, and then channel message with source. And then in the data, I am going to just put content responding to button. And then once I do that, it should respond just into that same channel. And it's, as you can see, it's very, very similar to how we actually responded to the / command. If I go back in here and try this, you can see that it responds to that button. And when I use just the channel message with source, it is replying to that message that I clicked the button for. Yeah, this session's recorded, so it'll be able to be looked through. But that's all I'm going to kind of walk through with the button. The guide itself goes through the same thing of just basically copying and pasting this code. It's also in this finished app.js file. If you want to do like a custom response for the button or something like that, you can switch it up. But all we're going to go through is just responding to it, because what I really want to hit home is responding to the specific interaction by hitting the custom or by querying for the custom ID here, matching it to the button or the select menu that you sent, and then responding to that specific interaction. And so that is where the last code I'm going to write for this, but I will be around and I can answer any questions that you have. And I will, yeah, I'll be lingering around. The other folks will be lingering around. But if you want, you can port the logic from this responding to / commands to also respond to this button in the same way. Or you can customize it however you want. The guide itself, if you want, can go through that last step as well. That has it responding with an embed as well here. But for now, I'm going to stop there. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to post some links for all of this after the workshop. I'll post links to, again, all the things we talked about here, as well as some developer resources, like a link to our DDEV server if you haven't joined that before, as well as our documentation, a written getting started guide, and just some other documentation that I referenced throughout this. I'll send it in probably that events announcement channel, if Emily is cool with that, just so you all have those follow-up links. And yeah, if you have questions, let me know. Thank you all for attending. I'm super excited so many of you got like a successful app up and running. It's really great to see, and glad that a lot of you were able to follow along.
Agreed. Thank you all so much. For folks who are still here, I have an extra special surprise for you, so please do stick around for a couple of minutes. And again, we have a lot of Discord staff in the chat right now, so if you do have any questions as you are wrapping up the app that you built today, feel free to keep posting in the chat and folks will be responding. First of all, I just want to thank Shay so incredibly much for this awesome workshop. Shay, I know that it's hard to sort of read through the chat while you're presenting, but we've been working behind the scenes and capturing a couple of really awesome messages that people have been sharing for you. Thank you so much for doing this. It was an awesome workshop, and I know folks are asking in the chat too if this workshop will be available later for recording or anything like that. So the answer is yes. There's actually a lot of options for seeing this again in the future. So we're running this workshop again live tomorrow at the same time. So if you want to come hang out with us again, please feel free. I also want to invite you to, come and join us tomorrow and help people out in the chat that maybe are joining this workshop for the first time tomorrow now that you've done it once yourself. Sometimes the best way to learn something is to teach it yourself. So you're definitely welcome to come back tomorrow and hang out with us. Let your friends know that we're hosting this tomorrow as well. We also have screening parties of this as well that are happening in other times that work better for other time zones. So if you have international friends, let them know too. And then at the end of the week, we will be sharing links to YouTube recordings for this workshop and then also the session that Alana did yesterday as well. So we'll have all those resources for you. Shay's going to be posting links soon for resources too. As promised, I do have a very special thing that I want to share with all of you. So we have some new Discord merch that is launching, and you all, since you got to come to this workshop, get exclusive access to the merch early. So I'm going to ask that you keep this to us here. Yep. So I'm going to post a link in the chat that's probably going to get lost. So I'm going to read it out loud as well. So the link is discordmerch.com/ddevs, and it's password protected. So I'm going to give you the exclusive password because you're here at this event. So here's the link. You're welcome to click on that now, and you'll see that it is password protected. Let me know when y'all are ready for the password, and you get to have a first look at this new merch that we have. The URL again is discordmerch.com/ddevs, so DDEVS. I've posted in the chat as well. We ready for the password? All right, so the password I'm not posting in the chat because I wanted to keep, just this exclusive club of folks who were here for the workshop today. So I'll spell it out a couple of times. So the password is in all caps, and it's Devs Preview, DEVS PREVIEW, and it's all one word, all capital letters, so no spaces. Devs Preview is the password to get in. So this group right here is the very first group to have eyes on this merch drop. Again, the password again is DEVS PREVIEW, all one word, all caps. So Devs Preview, all caps, all one word, all together. And I'll post the URL again because I do see that people are looking for that. Again, give me 1 second. I know, how cool is this? You came to an app workshop to build an app and now you get exclusive merch. I know, I don't think Shay even knew I was gonna do this. This is like very exclusive, top secret information for all of you. Again, the password again is Devs Preview, all caps, DEVS PREVIEW, all caps, no spaces, all one word. And now that I'm looking at Dev's Preview spelled over and over again, I keep thinking I'm spelling it wrong. It's just Dev's Preview, all one word, all caps. I know, it's awesome. So thank you again so much for joining us for our app workshop today. Enjoy checking out this new merch that we're dropping. And again, this is super exclusive just for y'all because you are here in the GDC server on Discord. And hope you all enjoy today's app workshop. Again, we'll be hanging out here for a couple more minutes in case there are any questions about the workshop. That said, though, there's still some time in the GDC game app. I believe Clyde is wrapping up at 2:30 today with Pacific time. So we still have another hour and a half. So check in on your team, see how your team is doing. And then don't forget as well, we have the kickoff of the activities tournament happening in 2 hours from now as well. So lots of fun stuff to be done in the server today. We'll still be here for a couple more minutes in case y'all have questions. But appreciate y'all being here. I know. Alana needs some support. It's Alana's birthday, and, Alana really wants her team to win. I got to shout out Team Galaxy, though. I'm Team Galaxy, so, where's my Galaxy squad? We gotta get back on the board. Last time I checked, there was no green at all. So let's get on that, Team Galaxy, shall we? Yeah, there we go. There's someone on the Galaxy.
You guys, Galaxy is making a comeback. Team Blazer was doing well. Protostar, you guys, you can do it. I believe in you.
We got this. We got this. All right, cool. I'm going to ask one last chance. Any other questions about the app building workshop before we end the stage channel today? And again, even if you didn't get your answers today, we'll be launching this again tomorrow. We'll have this workshop live again tomorrow. Then we have a couple screening parties as well. Just checking if there's any other questions. Yep, the links will be coming shortly. Shay will be posting those. There's a question about how do you join the teams. There's a quiz command channel, and you type /, I think it's / quiz, and then you get the quiz from there. But also, if you just post in that channel, there's a lot of folks who will be able to help you out with that. Yep. Cool. Awesome. Thank you all so much. We're going to go ahead and close out the stage channel in a moment, but appreciate you all being here. Enjoy that exclusive merch preview. And we'll see you all on Discord. Have a good rest of GDC, everyone. Take care.